I'm Muhammad Irfan, and this video is brought to you by Mavia. Follow us on social media and let's connect and build together. In this lecture, we will be focusing on advanced clinical natural language processing. This is an introductory lecture. We will be learning about relation extraction, assertion, and evaluation, and we will be moving from the classical ways of just identifying keywords and analyzing based on these keywords to now processing clinical context. Let's start. First, we have named entity recognition. So, what named entity recognition basically is that it identifies entities from the medical text corpus and it classifies it as predefined entities. Like that could be a medical condition, it could be a medicine, etc. So, while NER does identify the medicines like aspirin or the medical conditions like heart failure, it does not tell us how they relate. So, our goal is to link the condition to the medicine and create a structured clinical knowledge. For example, think of connecting a medication entity into its specific dosage and route, which will allow us to understand the full context of the prescription or treatment plan. So, our goal is to link these entities together, and we will be going beyond named entity recognition. Simple. So, to achieve that goal, we have relation extraction. What relation extraction basically does is it identifies semantic relationship between identified entities within our clinical text corpus and unveil how they interact or influence each other. So this is relation extraction is basically the task at our hand or goal. Common clinical relations can be treatment to condition. For example, metformin treats type 2 diabetes or test to result. For example, hemoglobin is 12.5 gram per deciliter. And the methodology of modern relation extraction is that it often leverages transformer-based architectures like BioClinicalBERT. So, as we know that transformers are this revolutionary architectures behind all this AI boom. So we can leverage these pre-trained transformer architectures and we can use them for relation extraction tasks in biomedical data. We have these architectures like bioclinical BERT or MedBERT to understand the contextual distance between words and infer relationships. So there are these pre-trained models and we can also fine tune them with our own data. Then we have assertion status. So in medical data science, identifying a disease or condition is only half the battle. Then we have the clinical utility that depends on understanding its assertion status, whether disease is present, it's absent, or we are uncertain if it is present or not. So the first one is that it's present. Basically, for example, a patient has pneumonia. That is a definitive statement of presence. Then we have absent, which is basically no evidence of pneumonia, means that we can rule out the conditions. And then there is uncertainty, which indicates a suspicion requiring further investigation. So these are the assertion statuses. Next, there is clinical utility and there is statistical accuracy. So now in normal machine learning, we use evaluation metrics for our trained models like accuracy or other evaluation metrics. But these simple evaluation metrics may not be as effective in medical data science as they are in simple machine learning models. For example, a model can have 95% accuracy, but it will still be useless if it misses critical rare diagnosis. So, what we need is not statistical accuracy. We don't need a number on paper that shows us that our model is uh, 95% accurate, but we need clinical utility that does our model or natural language processing output directly improve the patient care decisions or significantly enhance workflow efficiency for healthcare professionals. So, if it does that, we can say that our model is clinically useful, not by its 95% accuracy. And then there is workflow integration, that evaluation must consider how the inherent noisiness and variability of EHR narratives translate into end user experience. So it basically is that in the electronic health record narratives, there is lots of variabilities in noisiness in that data, and our evaluation metrics should consider these inherent noisiness. So basically, the problem with simple evaluation metrics like accuracy in biomedical data is that, for example, think of a data that we have on our hand, and we need to train a model, classification model, that does a patient has a disease or not. So we have a data of 100 patients, 95 of these patients are not diagnosed with cancer, and 5 of them are diagnosed with cancer. So data is very imbalanced. 95% of the data is one class, and the other 5% is the other class. So if we train a model, it predicts everyone to not have cancer, and we evaluate that model through accuracy. The model will show us that it has 95% accuracy because it predicted 95 um, observations correctly and 5 incorrectly. So normally that would be a very good model. So the reason that simple evaluation metrics like accuracy are not useful in medical data science for the evaluation of medical data science models is that these models do not take into account every observation. For example, medical data can be severely imbalanced. Think of a data in which there's a data of 100 people, and 95 of whom do not have pneumonia, and only 5 of them have are diagnosed with pneumonia. So if we train a model that says that everyone does not have pneumonia, and it predicts everyone to not have pneumonia, then on paper our model looks very accurate, because if we calculate the accuracy, it predicted 95 people accurately to not have pneumonia, but it completely neglected the 5 people who actually had pneumonia. So it is actually a terrible model, and it is not clinically usable. So we use different evaluation metrics to judge how clinically usable our model actually is. So first we have F1 score. In F1 score, two things come into discussion. First we have precision, then recall. Precision basically answers the question of all predicted pneumonia cases, like those who are model predicted to have pneumonia, how many were truly correct. Thus, it minimizes false positives. Then recall answers the question of all actual pneumonia cases in the text, how many did the model successfully find. So it minimizes false negatives. And then F1 score is basically the harmonic mean of precision and recall, and thus offering a balanced measure, because false positives and false negatives are critically important in clinical data science, because we do not want to predict person to not have cancer when they in fact are diagnosed with cancer, because that is a terrible mistake on our end. So these things are of very critical importance, and F1 score balances them out. So F1 score is a good matrix to use for our models. Then we have area under receiver operating characteristic curve and area under precision recall curves. Basically, both of these evaluation metrics are areas. The first is area under receiver operating curves, which is basically a plot between false positive rate and false negative rate and the area under that curve. And that area tells us that the higher that area is, it indicates a better separability between positive and negative classes. And area under precision and recall curve, it tells us about the precision on rare positive events. So in severely imbalanced data, it tells us how the model is performing on these rare conditions, like those 5 people out of 100 who were diagnosed with pneumonia. So these are two evaluation metrics. Then we have evaluating de-identification and privacy. So in medical data science, protecting patient privacy is paramount. De-identification is a critical step, but it must be balanced carefully. So our safe harbor is that our systems must demonstrate the ability to accurately remove all 18 specified identifier, and which are defined by HIPAA. So all these identifiers should be removed, thus ensuring that the patient's data remain anonymous and that we cannot trace back to the patient from their data. But the trade-off is that there is a challenge. The challenge lies in ensuring robust privacy without inadvertently stripping away crucial clinical meaning and context necessary for downstream research, analytics, patient care. So basically, there is a trade off between privacy and clinical utility. We should remove all these 18 specified identifiers which are defined by HIPAA, but we should be careful to not strip our data of useful information which can be necessary for patient care and or analytics and research. Then we have transformer fine tuning for named entity recognition and relation extraction. So in today's world, we leverage the power of pre-trained transformer models, and it is a cornerstone of advanced clinical language processing. We do not train our model from scratch. There are lots of pre-trained models on huge corpus of medical data, utilizing architectures like BioClinicalBERT or MedBERT, which are pre-trained on vast amount of biomedical data. Biomedical text provides a strong foundation for clinical tasks. So we take those pre-trained models and then we fine-tune them with our own data. We give these model our own data, we fine-tune them, and thus making them precise for our own tasks. So these models are then tuned or adopted on specified labeled clinical nodes. For example, the MIC3 database to specialize them for tasks like named entity recognition and relation extraction in the clinical domain. So when we fine tune these models, then we need to take them out to production environments so that medical professionals can actually use these models. So for that, we use different technical pipelines like GitHub, Docker, etc. First, we containerize and encapsulate the entire natural language processing environment, which include different libraries like Spacey, Science Spacey, and all the dependencies, guaranteeing that the pipeline runs identically on any machine. So we can eliminate it works on my machine issue. So we need our environment to run anywhere. So we encapsulate the entire environment in a Docker container, and then we upload it to GitHub. GitHub provides a robust version control for managing code, model weights, and configuration files, enabling collaborative development and tracking changes effectively. So basically, GitHub is used for version control, and that if we need to change or make any tweaks in our code or model weights, we can do that with the help of GitHub. So this is a simple way of how we can containerize our environments through Docker. So this is a simple Docker file. First, we define the environment of Python, then we copy all the requirements and install all those requirements because the requirements in medical data are huge. So we encapsulate them all, and then we run that program. So mm, we can run our model. This Docker setup ensures the NER pipeline runs identically on your local development environment and on AWS Lambda. So we can run this on locally, and also we can run this on cloud. Then cloud deployment on AWS and SageMaker, scaling natural language processing from a single notebook to a hospital-wide API. So basically, when we upload or we deploy these models on cloud, these encapsulated models on cloud, we can just generate an API, and it can be easier for medical professional to use our named entity recognition models. And for that, we use AWS Lambda for lightweight serverless NER triggers and SageMaker endpoints for hosting heavy transformer models to provide real-time extraction. So these are the cloud um, services that we can use. Summary of this lecture and the key takeaways. The evaluation requires a mix of statistical metrics like F1 and area under receiver operating characteristic curve and clinical common sense. So basically, we cannot just be dependent on the evaluation metrics. We have to use our contextual knowledge and clinical common sense basically to know if the model is performing or the model is clinically usable or not. And relation extraction and assertion status turns a list of words into patient's story. So these are the key takeaways, and this was all about this lecture. Thank you.